Hey, what's up? It's Phoenix. I'm really excited because today I'm going to talk about the book James by Percival Everett. This is a book that won the National Book Award and is a retelling of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Just a heads up, there will be spoilers ahead for the book in this review. Now, I will admit this book was not easy to read. It is a retelling of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn from the perspective of Jim, who is a slave in the original Mark Twain book. But I would say that one of the things that this book does really well is it is very humanizing. And Percival Everett actually remarks that the reason why he liked Mark Twain was because of his humanity. And I think that what Percival Everett is able to do with this book is capture the humanizing element of what it means to be human and to humanize very difficult subject matter. So, of course, the elephant in the room is the fact that this book is about slavery. It is about racism. And while I am not necessarily in a place to be able to comment on such things, I definitely want to describe in this book how Percival Everett was able to humanize the experience while painting a very stark picture that I think is very accurate and from the perspective of someone who would be able to talk about these things, being African American himself. The reason why I think the book is very humanizing is because you feel for the character Jim. You feel for the fact that he is someone who is going through horrific things, unfathomable things, things that you wouldn't want anyone that you love to go through. And all of this because Jim wants to take care of Huck. And that, to me, is such a fascinating theme. It is a humanity that definitely is a thread throughout this entire book. But it's not easy to stomach. There are moments where characters are assaulted. There are moments where characters are dehumanized. There are moments where characters are defeated and where they are belittled and destroyed. And the thing that's so powerful about this book is that it does it in a way to where you definitely feel that sense of empathy for what Jim is going through. You definitely feel that sense of appreciation for the fact that people do overcome very impossible things. And of course, the elephant in the room is the slavery and the racism. But the fact is, you find that Jim, who later becomes James, you find that he's able to completely overcome the terrible circumstances in which he went through. And that is what I think Everett does a good job with, is being able to wrap it up in a way that is not only believable, but also empathetic, because you realize that James has gone through an unbelievable experience throughout this narrative of almost dying, of being beaten, of becoming a slave multiple times, that you realize that he didn't deserve what he went through, of course, but that he was able to still nonetheless get through it. And that is what is so powerful. Now, I will admit, I am a little bit inexperienced in thinking about some of these topics because they're so complicated and taboo and very difficult to understand as an outsider. But I think the reason why this book is a book that I think people should read is because it does humanize something that is very difficult to talk about. It does it in a way to where there is a lot of empathy being instilled, to where you can understand that people might have been through very harrowing circumstances and gone through terrible things, but still nonetheless keep their humanity. And even though James is definitely a character who you could argue does some things that are very problematic in a lot of ways, you understand the reasoning, and you have to really put yourself in his shoes. And I think that that is one of the number one reasons why we would read a book and why we would feel empathy specifically, is because we want to try to understand what a person is going through. And so I myself don't judge or condemn James at all in any way, because I cannot say that if I was in his own shoes that I would have acted any differently, and that's what's so powerful about this. Now, I will say that the book does seem to get darker and darker, and even though the book is definitely known for its sense of humor in the style of Twain, for instance, I still actually find the book to get darker and darker because it gets more and more complex and it gets more and more difficult to be able to read the circumstances. And I think that is what makes the book so harrowing and so heart-wrenching, but also so worthwhile, is that the book definitely captures very difficult themes and depicts very difficult scenes. and yet nonetheless does it in a way to where you feel as though you understand that there is a reason for being able to describe these things. It is very realistic in that way. And that's what's interesting about Twain as being the exemplar, in a way, for this book, is that Twain was describing it from his own perspective at the time, but he was also doing it in a way to where he was trying to have empathy. He was trying to be able to change society through his writing, being very, very socially aware. And yet, to me, the reason why this book needs to be darker than Twain's original book is because it needs to capture that reality that slaves experienced at the time. Percival Everett is an African-American man, and so he is describing this, he is writing this book from his own perspective as living in America. But that is just what is so brutal about the book, and why I think the book does get darker and darker, is because it really is capturing that terrible reality that people experience, that essentially people of color experience. Now, I will admit, like I said, I consider myself to be an outsider to this world. I don't fully understand it. I haven't inhabited or experienced it. But I would still nonetheless say that this book is very important to read, because it does really well what books are able to do, which it shows you a different perspective and lets you inhabit the minds of other people who have different experiences. And to me, it's not so much about politics as it is about empathy. The point is to be able to imagine a perspective that is very foreign from our own. The point is to be able to imagine a perspective that we might not always understand, and that we might not always be able to even always relate to, and sometimes might not even empathize with. And I can see why this book won the awards that it did, because it definitely captures this very brutal reality that is underneath the surface of American culture and American history. I don't think that it was done in a way that was necessarily easy, and I don't think it was an easy book to write. And I will also admit, even though the book is entertaining because it has such a fast pace and is so interesting in a lot of ways, I don't think that it was easy to write, and I don't think that it's easy to read. So I think that that's very important to keep in mind. So yeah, I recommend this book. I think it is a wonderful book. I think it is very action-packed and definitely does justice to the original. I think that what Percival Everett has done is build on a tradition and added new facets to something that probably really wasn't conveyed in the same way at the time. I have studied African American literature, and there were African American writers during this time that Twain was writing. But I do think being able to update these traditions and being able to challenge them and dialogue with them and even critique them is very valuable. And I think that that is what Percival Everett has done. And I think that he's definitely added to the sensibility and to the tradition in which he's writing in. And I think that is a very powerful thing. So yeah, I'm Phoenix. I hope that you'll check the book out. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you'll check out my videos. I hope that you'll check out my books. I hope you'll check out my music. And yeah, thank you for listening to this book review and for watching, and I will see you soon.